Matt, welcome to A Voice and Beyond. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and thank you for inviting me on your show.
Of course, thank you for being here. Now, Matt, you are part of the first group of Wim Hof Method instructors in the US. You teach Wim Hof Method workshops, you lead the trainings and retreats worldwide. And you're on a mission to empower people to master the stress response for peak performance. You've also created your own training system and brand called the Cold Club. Now, to be honest, I am very fascinated in all this work, and I have dabbled in to the Wim Hof method myself. I've done some of the breath work. I haven't done the cold plunges because that would be my worst nightmare. But I do believe in the benefits of all this work. So let's start at the origins of the Wim Hof method. Let's just start there, and we're going to go into your brand as well and your training. But when I think of the Wim Hof method, breath work comes to mind first up. And then I have all the visions of him doing all these cold plunges in freezing cold waters. But can we begin by you telling our listeners about this method and how it came to be?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's interesting that you bring up breath work as the focal point or the start, because I think these days the Wim Hof Method breath work is probably the largest breath work that's, in the world.
Mm.
So many people are using this method to, reframe their relationship to stress or even just deep meditative practices. It's a really beautiful protocol.
Mhm.
So how did it get started? Well, Wim really he investigates. He's a searcher. He's a seeker. And as he went about trying to figure out, the breath through yoga or martial arts, all these different disciplines, he always came back to how he responded in nature in real time. And the breath was basically born out of his experiences, combining these yogic disciplines, these martial art disciplines, along with just these natural experiences like going into water and feeling your breath start to speed up naturally in order to adapt to the stressor. And as that happens, he goes, okay, though, there's the adaptation. Now maybe a breath hold would be appropriate. And he played with this for quite some time. And really, it got formalized, if you will, probably about 15 years ago, maybe not quite that much, but pretty close. And when I came across it, I was just blown away for so many reasons. But one of the biggest ones is I had experience with different types of breath work. I had been doing different things like Qigong practice or even different pranayama practices through yogic disciplines. I had been introduced to some basic martial art breathing from my father. So this was not unfamiliar to me, the breathwork side. But when I actually engaged and the differences that I felt going through even just the most basic parts of the Wim Hof method, it was amazing, and I felt like somebody had handed me a key to the nervous system and was like, here you go. Go
Mm.
ahead and open this door up. There's tons to investigate and learn, and you'll understand it on a deep and profound level. And that's really been the journey from the start. So I've been on this now for, over a decade, and I just keep learning about the breath, how it impacts our health and performance and happiness, how it impacts our mood,
Mm.
yeah, all sorts of things. So it's a very, very powerful thing. And at this point, I really see the breath as the doorway. It's the doorway in. And it's
Mm.
something that we do so much, 20,000 times a day, is the average breathing. It's like we do that so much. We have all these opportunities to tap in and connect with ourselves and just feel and perform better.
So you have shared that you had some childhood trauma and that played a role in shaping your path. Are you happy to share your journey that led you to doing this work? And how you were feeling at the time when you embarked on this journey, and how you felt, and the kinds of like on a daily basis, the changes that you started to experience through the work.
Sure, absolutely. You know, by the time I came across the Wim Hof method, I felt like I had resolved much of that early childhood trauma. So I'll dig into it just briefly. But what I learned after the method really informed just new layers and understanding and helped me in any number of ways. So early on, I was exposed to domestic violence, right? We had a lot of just disruption in the home. I moved to many different places. And, I also had a very loving family in a lot of ways, like especially the extended family, my close family. But having that central disruption was really pretty challenging. And what I found is I was anxious all the time. I was
Yeah.
depressed. I was angry. I really had some challenges managing emotions. And early on, I used sports as my outlet. So I dug in deep to sports. I tried to do some basic meditation early on, but I didn't really know what I was doing. I was more or less just kind of copying what I thought what I saw other people do or what I
Yes.
thought we were supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like one of those pieces. And martial arts was actually one of the biggest helpers to resolve a lot of that early trauma. And then doing things like having my own family made a tremendous difference, and seeing that life, is can be reestablished in a new
Mm-hmm.
way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it was really interesting because when I came across the Wim Hof method, I started on it because of a physical injury. But actually, the mental and emotional side of the practice was actually the most profound. And what it allows you to do is feel some of those stress moments, those things that are, can be extreme stress or overwhelming moments, such as, I can recall several times, in my youth when we'd be, sort of running for safety and locking up and just being so tense everywhere, probably from some hyperventilation that was happening.
Yep.
And now experiencing that later, going, oh, okay, well, I can consciously induce some of those same feelings, but now I'm in control of it and I can guide it any number of ways. So, it's been very interesting to walk through the practice and to see how it shows up, both from the breath work or entering the cold water, for example. That's another great space because it's hard. It's really, it puts the body on a defense. You said that you weren't quite willing to jump in there because it was maybe a really scary thing for you. And I understand that's a very common reaction. And I'll admit I hated the cold when I started, right? It was something that I kind of repelled, but learning to manage that, gosh, it was really, really wonderful and builds security. You kind
Mm.
of understand, okay, yeah, I can build security myself and that deeper trust. Those
Mm.
are all very powerful things.
Yes. I have actually started embarking on a journey of trying some of that cold water on my body, but just in the shower. So the last, however, maybe perhaps the last minute in the shower, I turn the tap on to cold. And the first time I did it, like I had to build to that. I started out perhaps 15 seconds, and then it was 30 seconds, then it was 45 seconds. So I built it, and I first of all started trying to breathe through it. I'm going, okay, just breathe through this. You're going to be fine. And just recently, I've started doing this self-talk out loud rather than breathing. So, and my self-talk now is my mantra for the year is you can do anything. You have choices in life.
Yeah.
So I stand there and I go, you have a choice. You are free to do whatever you want in your life. You can choose your path. So I'm doing this kind of like
Yeah.
affirmation work. And I feel that it is kind of like really embedding itself in my body while I'm in that cold water. And
Heck yeah.
I do have a friend who suffers from depression,
Hmm.
and she uses a cold water plunge as a brain hack. So
Sure.
for this friend of mine, they have a freezing cold swimming pool because they live in a part of the world where the weather doesn't become too hot all year round. It's pretty cool. And they jump in the pool every morning, first thing in the morning, as a way of kind of like a brain hack is what I want to call it, but I suppose it's doing something to the nervous system, is it?
Well, sure. Yeah, absolutely. All throughout the nervous system and the brain and the body. You're getting
Mm.
flooded with positive hormones. Uh, you're getting all of those endorphins, so you feel good. It elevates the mood. You're getting a spike of dopamine. Afterward, you feel
Yes.
really invigorated.
Yes.
A lot of energy.
Yes, because that's a thing. I know it's coming because I've turned when I'm having the cold shower. I know it's coming, and it's kind of this love-hate feeling. A part of it you hate it, but the other part you love because all of a sudden you go, da-da, I'm alive. You really do feel alive in that moment. That sensation is incredible. So for me, it's really helped me in terms of mindset, in terms of feeling empowered, invigorated. And, I've been going through some stuff over the last 6 months, 6 to 12 months, and it's really helped with my mindset. And we're living in crazy times, and you're now helping other people in their journeys and with their challenges. And I believe that since COVID, we haven't really returned to the way life was pre-COVID. People seem to be way more stressed out, maxed out, in burnout. People are worried about their financial situations. They're worried about politics. They're worried about so many things, even just putting food on the table, a roof over their heads. So, what are the most common challenges that you're dealing with, that the people that you're working with? What are the most common challenges that they're facing in their lives, and how are you able to help them?
Yeah, so you bring up a lot of really good points. You know, first off, I love that what you're doing in the shower in terms of leveraging the choice, right? Because there's a big difference between the stress we choose and the stress we don't choose. And you kind of brought up both of those things. It's like, how am I going to make sure that I can feed my family properly and sit down or release some of this anxiety or manage the politics of the day that I have really no direct control over per se? Those are all things that we don't get to choose necessarily, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or we have very limited choice in them. And the shower is one that we can choose. We can choose to dial it to cold and experience that and then stand in there with our arms up, and tell ourselves, good job. Repeat, I choose this. I'm standing here. There's so much empowerment with that. And
Mm,
it speaks to like these sort of three levels that I'd like to talk about with stress. And what we're
sure.
trying to do is we're trying to leverage it. Leverage the good stress, leverage the stuff that we can choose so that we can manage the stuff that we don't choose.
Mm,
That we just end up being much better off dealing with those situations. And so one piece is really, redefining our stress triggers. So this is about shifting our baseline. And by stepping into that shower and saying, yeah, I'm willing to build it up gradually. I'll do that 15 seconds or 30 seconds. We start to redefine what actually stresses us throughout the rest of the day. All of a sudden, the phone call that we receive with bad news, our nervous system doesn't react so strongly to,
mm,
right? We show up a little bit more calm. Our brain automatically starts to go, okay, I can just breathe. Another piece is, just applying techniques to stay calm and focused under pressure. So that includes the breath. That includes paying attention to what's happening in the body. You start to realize, oh, a lot of times when I get stressed, I hold my breath and I
mm,
feel a lot of tension. That's so common. Have you ever
mm.
had some of that kind of thing?
Yes, absolutely. And breath holding is a thing that so many of us do. And I even see that in my singers. I have students, I'm a singing teacher by trade. And a lot of my singers, a lot of where they come unstuck in their singing is through breath holding. There's not consistent breath flow. So I've been doing a lot of work with breath flow, and even on myself. I have COPD, and I try and do the work with my students. When I'm teaching them, I'm also doing it alongside them. So I get the bonus of having that opportunity to do the work myself and on myself. But breath holding is massive. And I think through the work that I've done on myself over the past few years, I've started doing meditation, I'm journaling. I have so many self-care practices. One of the things is awareness. Most
Sure.
people are not aware. And I think if you're not aware that you're breath holding, then how can you fix that problem?
Absolutely. And awareness it's the start, right? The mind is really the starting place. It's building that
Yes.
awareness and that relationship with yourself. And most of us are just getting through the day, right? Just trying to meet
Mm-hmm.
with whatever's in front of us. But just taking those brief pauses and starting to check in with the breath. I often will recommend, if somebody's new to this, put on a timer 3 times a day and just check in, just see where you're at. You might find when that timer goes off that you've been holding your breath, right? You start to build that awareness.
Yeah.
And even if you were not holding your breath, maybe you've got a little bit of disrupted breathing pattern. A common
Mm.
thing, might be that you're breathing through the mouth really pretty fast or something along those lines when you don't need to, per se, right? When we're
Mm.
sitting in front of a computer trying to get that email off, whatever it is at the time of the day that needs to be done. So just having those check-in moments, just really simple check-in moments, can all of a sudden build better patterning, better habits,
Mm.
and it'll reduce anxiety. You asked me earlier, what are some of the most common things that I see with people? Really, the two that are sticking out, I would say the most, is like this fear and anxiety, this uncertainty about what's coming, like almost like this impending dread. I see it a lot. People are
Mm.
experiencing that, and it's coming from a lot of different angles, so it's
Mm-hmm.
understandable. But
Mm-hmm.
I see that a lot, and people are holding their postures really tight. They're
Mm-hmm.
changing the way they look. They're looking down a lot,
Mm-hmm.
holding, shoulders crowded. You're crowding your lungs, not really able to even get a good breath so that you feel okay. A lot of times we say, oh, let it go, let that go, let that. Those are easy statements, but what does that mean?
Yes. Yes.
When we get in touch with the breath, I feel like we can actually practice a physical letting go.
Mm.
And we just really get to that exhale, and it'll change our body. We start opening our shoulders a little bit more.
Mm.
So I would say that's a big one.
Yes. I relate to everything you just said, and I'm guilty of all of those things. I went through a phase in my life where I was hunching over and I wasn't aware, but I literally felt during that time that I had the world's weight on my shoulders. And that was just a manifestation of what I was feeling and thinking and believing in my life. And then that breath holding, yes, because I was stressed. And I think that when we are stressed, isn't it that our breath becomes shorter and quicker and it's higher in the chest? Is that the way that
Typically,
stress impacts our breath?
yeah, it can be bigger breaths sometimes a little more shallow. Typically, we'll do more mouth-centered breaths, and it's higher in the chest to try to get those lungs open so that we can prepare for big action like running or fighting or something like that. But that's usually not what we need in those moments. It's mental stress. It's like the psychological stuff that's really bearing down on us. And so that reaction, it's as old as time, but it's
Mm.
not necessary or useful in our modern context.
Yes.
It's like we got to reframe this a little bit.
Yes. When I was in that, I was in a very high stress mode,
Mhm.
and I didn't realize for quite some time, and Actually, it was through meeting people through this podcast who were different kinds of thought leaders, people who were dabbling in different modalities, that I started to listen, and I realized that I was in survival mode. I was in a constant survival mode. And so I started to do that work on myself. And that's why I've embarked on the journey that I'm on. And I was definitely breath holding through that time. But you talked about too, breathing through the mouth. Is there a difference, and is there an impact to breathing through the mouth and through the nose?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. The short answer is yes. And if we think about it in terms of like basic health, we're thinking about we should be 80% breathing through the nose and at maximum about 20% with the mouth. And the mouth breathing that's best is typically on the exhale, for more restful type occasions. The only time mouth breathing on an inhale can be really useful is in a high intensity, where you're doing maybe really intense sports or high output, some kind of running, something that really demands a lot higher intensity. And then we're going to pair the nose and mouth together better. The other piece that the mouth breathing can contribute to problems with is it can create some structural problems, especially in the throat, right?
Really?
The throat and the jaw. If you're tied up to the upper chest instead of the diaphragm, you start building restriction around the midsection. You weaken your core. Like there can be several different issues that can arise, and you're not with the mouth. You're not warming and moistening the air. You're not filtering the air. So you've got some potential issues. Now, I don't want to say that mouth breathing is all bad, because like I said, there's great times to do it under high demand, or
And
if you're doing
singing.
specialized exercises, singing, swimming, there's definitely great places, and playing an instrument, playing a wind instrument, for example. So mouth breathing can show up. It just tends to be limited to particular activities to leverage it the best.
Okay. It's very interesting because you did mention about the structural changes. Now, I remember some time ago reading that the shape of our heads and our faces has changed over time because of the way that we breathe. Is there truth in that, or am I making that up?
No, I think there is some truth. I think sometimes it gets a little bit exaggerated, like that's the only reason. I think that's a fairly sizable reason, though. So it's definitely worth paying attention to. Some of it is also they're finding with nutrition. So are we getting enough macronutrients and so forth, or are we not? Are we chewing enough? Right? If we're not getting enough chewing, we're not going to build a strong jaw. Right.
Yeah.
So, and this is over long periods of time. But yeah, absolutely. Like how we breathe. You can imagine that if I sat slouched all day, right? Well, what would my skin look like on my belly, and how would my back be stretched, and those muscles would be really stretched in the back and really, shrunk in the front, right? That's how my body would be. And I would start to develop a little lip on the bottom of my belly, even if you didn't have any fat, right? Because of the way we sat. Well, if we have our mouth open all day and we've got this sort of jaw, coming down, and we're breathing, without resistance, where it's open mouth and open throat, over time, that has a pretty sizable impact, just like if I was slouching.
Yeah.
So having just that natural resistance of the nose, or if you're going to use the mouth, putting restriction in there to control volume and flow and using those muscles, because the mouth is incredibly nuanced with its ability to control this space, the airflow. And you probably know that so well as a singer, right? How you use tension in the throat, how you, change the space in the soft and hard palates. Those things make a big difference.
Yes, they make a big difference to sound as well. The kinds of sounds that we make as singers, is the reconfiguration of all of that changes the resonance and the timbre of our voices. Now, you've talked about stress and anxiety. Can you tell me the difference between stress and anxiety? Is there a difference? Because some people say, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed. Oh my gosh, I'm so anxious. I mean, what is the difference? Is there a scientific difference between the two? And can either of them be good as well as bad?
Oh, that's a pretty good question there. Well, in terms of the scientific difference, if we take sort of the early, the person that actually defines stress early on, sort of the father of stress, he defined it as a generalized response to any demand. So that just kind of encompasses everything,
Mm,
right? A generalized response to any demand. It just leaves the door open. So stress can be a lot of stuff. So what we can look at is stress is sort of phase oriented. So it's got different parts to it. In other words, there's the part where you've got something that happens, an event that happens, or a stimulus that happens. And in response, your body goes through adaptation and tries to make adjustments in order to meet that demand that it perceives. And over time, we'll keep adapting until we hit sort of exhaustion and so forth. So that's really the scientific part of stress. And if we think about anxiety, like, well, what is that different? That's a pretty specific thing. Now we can have generalized anxiety, or we can have very specific anxiety, disorders and that sort of thing. But anxiety can sometimes just be that stirring on the inside, like you don't know what to do or where to go or what's that next action. And we just feel just sort of muddled in that space for those of
mm,
us that experience it, or just like that uncertainty. And I think that, we often will overlap the feeling of stress and the steering of anxiety. And they feel, I think, a lot the same for many of us,
mm.
right? Where even though I don't know what my body has to do, it's like constant in mode trying to figure it out. Well, that's that same sort of feeling we get when we're feeling really stressed and the body's just trying to show up to meet the demand. It's
Mm.
like, how do we do this? How do we steer the body in a new way or steer the mind in a new way to manage some of these things? And I mean, we all have our own tools. Everybody kind of figures out what works for them. Not one thing works for all people, but I definitely see over and over that pushing your body into like sort of harnessing that feeling of uncertainty and that stress that we feel or that anxiety tends to resolve it. Things like turning that shower cold or going out to nature and getting into cold water or leveraging the breath, like going through really deep breathing and fast so that you mirror a stress response. You put your body into that and then bring it back down to a calm state. Like
Mm.
those actions seem to work really, really well for people. It's a kinesthetic, you know, you get to step into an empowering role and choose the direction instead of just sort of being almost feeling like you're a victim of your own mind and body sometimes,
Yes,
right? It's just like, what
yes.
the heck am I going to do here? Something's got to change.
Yeah, and for me, when I'm anxious, I've realized, and I think this is a common thing, that we're worried about something that hasn't happened yet. We're not being mindful and we're not being present in that moment in time. And I feel that's what the cold shower does. Because it's so cold and that's all you can focus on in that moment is, oh my gosh, I'm so cold. It kind of takes you out of that stress or that anxious mode. And I lived with chronic anxiety. That was part of the issue that I was having that led me on this journey. And I decided that I was doing the breath work, and I will talk about my experiences with breath in a moment. But I tried all the breath work that I had access to, and I decided to have hypnotherapy. I started doing hypnotherapy sessions, and I still do them once a week. The first time I did hypnotherapy and I went into that hypnotic state, I didn't want to come out of it. I couldn't remember the last time I felt so calm. It was so foreign to me that I felt that I was exhausted. I felt so calm. I couldn't, I make out the difference between being exhausted and being calm, because I was always having that cortisol and going through my body, those hormones that were keeping me on this treadmill. So that was quite an experience. And now I've come to a point where I know when I'm anxious because I'm worried about something that's going to happen, and I now have the tools to deal with that. And when I need to embrace that anxiety because I need a little bit of a kickstart to get through that next task I have ahead of me,
Hmm.
because I just need a little bit more fuel in the tank. And that adrenaline is what's going to drive me to deliver my best work, whatever that next work is.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's really beautiful, because I think you nailed something that I think a lot of us struggle with. And that's kind of figuring out and discerning the difference between when those stress hormones can be used in our favor and
Mm,
push us forward to do
mm-hmm,
something really important or even extraordinary sometimes, or this other side that's just like stirring and rooting us down and breaking us down.
mm,
And figuring that out, like on a personal basis, I can imagine could be one of the most empowering things. I mean, I know
absolutely.
for me that I feel the same. Anxiety was a big part of my journey, where I was always feeling that dread for so many years. And like learning the difference between, no, you're okay, or yeah, you got to step on the gas here. I like that. I've been through many of those same kind of things, and it's incredibly liberating.
Mm. I mean, for example, for me, if I have a presentation that I have to deliver, I need those stress hormones.
Yeah.
I need that little bit of a kickstart, because that's what's going to help me deliver the best presentation, and being able to turn it into a positive nervous energy rather than, I am so scared, my butterflies are all in formation right now. you
Mhm.
know so yeah. Do we all have the ability to master stress, do you think?
Yeah, I do. I do. And I think that a lot of it is, I kind of break it up into two parts. One is, is this something that is really important for you? If you're getting just bogged down with stress all the time, make that the goal,
Mm,
because all of the rest of your life will change. You'll open up, you'll feel so much more liberation, freedom, joy. You'll be willing to do more adventure. You'll have more openness in your relationships, just lots of good stuff where you don't feel so guarded all the time. Some of us, though, we've got a pretty good manage on life, right? And so, but once in a while, we need that extra kick or that extra boost. And for those people, I say, okay, well, leverage stress. Take some of that good stuff and make it a little bit better,
mm,
right? So I feel like depending on where you're at, we've got these different sort of goals. And when I wrote my book, Stronger Through Stress, I really focused on two groups of people. One that was dealing with some major health issues, really challenged, and stress exacerbates nearly every health issue. So for those that were dealing with autoimmune disorders of various kinds, for those people that are dealing with just debilitating injuries or whatever it might be,
mm,
I wanted to speak to those people. I also wanted to speak to the group that is incessantly working 18 hours, 20 hours a day, not sleeping, pushing themselves constantly for the next best thing, and just running themselves ragged. That was the other group, because I feel like they share so much in common.
mm.
And, the work people, if you're not experiencing that health issue, it's probably in the mail, unfortunately, if you're pushing yourself that far that often,
Yes, yes,
right?
yes.
And so those are the people that I think you guys should master stress. Let's go on this journey together. It's worth your time. It'll save you tons of time and energy in the long run. And for those of us that have got a little bit more balance in our life, but could use that extra energy and so forth, all right, go ahead and just pick a tool or two and leverage it. Check in with
Mm,
your breath, get into the cold, do your sauna work, that
Mm.
kind of thing. And all of a sudden you get this big elevation in your life and it feels great.
Has this work been proven by science to work? Like, has there been research carried out to give this work credibility?
Yeah, and there's more and more studies that are happening. And so, not everything gets to be studied and for how long and so forth. But yes, we've got studies that'll show reduced inflammation, both acute for people that are experiencing acute inflammation, that's means short term or that's happening now, or chronic inflammation, right? People that are having ongoing debilitating issues like autoimmune
Mm.
issues or that kind of thing. We've got studies around that to show that, cold water can be efficacious there. There's some evidence that shows that cold water at sufficiently cold temperatures can even impact cancer cells. So
Mm.
we're seeing that. We've got studies, the 2019 Nobel Prize winner, in fact, uh, for uh, for breath, basically was showing that under hypoxia, when you do long breath holds or shift the body low, you get this big production of hypoxia-induced factor, and that has an implication in reducing things for cancer and so forth. So
Mm-hmm.
lots of positivity across the board, but beyond what's actually able to be studied in a controlled environment, which is admittedly fewer things, we've got hundreds of thousands of people and case reports sharing their stories.
Wow.
And as my position, well, within the Wim Hof method, I'm not doing this any longer, but for years I trained the trainers. So I would bring in, I've trained over 750 trainers and worldwide, and these people would tell me remarkable stories. And one that I would love to share with you is
Yes,
this woman
please.
recently, this past fall. Her name is Simone, and this is a person that is super intelligent, just radiates like goodness. She's just, you could tell you wanted to be around this kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
She was just a really, you could tell, thoughtful, caring, smart, all the things that are great. And she was just dealing with the most debilitating of diseases. And she didn't know what she had. She was basically having internal organ failure, and
Wow.
she couldn't identify why. And her dad shifted. I think he left surgery to become an internist. He basically redid his medical stuff so that he could focus to see if he could solve her problem. And it was her mom that decided, that told her about getting into cold water because she had more of the hippie vibe. And immediately she, Simone just dismissed her mother. She's like, this isn't going to work. What is this kind of stuff? Well, during COVID, she had to be isolated at one point and found herself in a house by herself, depressed, sad, and feeling terrible, but had to be isolated because of her immune system, and decided that she was going to prove her mother wrong by going into the Baltic Sea. And she walks out on the
Mm.
beach from this house in the middle of nowhere, walks into the Baltic Sea, cursing her mother about how it's not going to work, about how she hates this. And she's sitting in there and she gets out and she realizes that she feels pretty good, but still miserable. Makes it all the way back, the long walk along the beach, back to the house. And by the time she gets back there, she's freezing and exhausted. But she feels better than she has in months.
Wow.
So she goes back again the next day
Mm-hmm.
and the next day
Mm-hmm.
and the next day. And when I saw her, yes, she has hard days, but she has a lot of wonderful days. And it's the only
Incredible.
thing that keeps her managed. It's like one of the most simple things in the world can have one of the most profound changes and give us back hope. That to me is like, really? That's what we've got available? And that's one story of hundreds that I could tell you about the efficacy of these tools. To me, it's about like where the rubber meets the road. If I think back to like all of the Olympic coaches, they didn't wait for the studies to come out to tell them how to train their athletes. They
Mm.
tested and tried things.
Mm-hmm.
So the people that are in this space that are leading this, yes, we want scientific data. I'm a science nerd. I love
Yes.
it. I dig
Yes.
deep into the literature. I write about it. I interview doctors and specialists the world over. I want to know that. I want to ground it. I want to know where I'm wrong and what I didn't consider. But really, when you see these stories over and over and over of people dealing with chronic fatigue, autoimmune, whatever it might be, and come out, like the proof is in the pudding. We're seeing
Mm,
it. It's
mm.
happening over and over.
I just want to ask you, well, there's a few things I want to ask you first up in relation to the cold therapy. So, like for me, just the thought of plunging into freezing cold water, I can't even go into the ocean on a hot day without going, oh my gosh, like I I just do not enjoy it at all. How do we start? Like, what would you recommend for me to do if it's something that I wanted to dabble into? Because I started the cold showers in
Mhm.
actual fact to help with inflammation. So that was because I heard somewhere that the cold therapy was great for inflammation, and you can just start by having a cold shower every morning. So I went, great, I'll try that. I'll give that a go. But the thought of getting into an ice bath absolutely freaks me out. So what would you suggest?
Well, the fact that you started with the cold showers is one of the best places to start. So for listeners that are new to this, you don't even have to go full cold at the beginning. What you did is built up gradually, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, maybe a little bit colder each time, and just practice exhaling, long exhales as your body's feeling that stressor. At first, your breath is going to want to jump. That's natural. Everybody has it. And it takes usually about 20 seconds for the body to start to adapt and
Ah,
then, make that change. And so most of us that flip it on and go, nope, I got to get out. That's too quick. So let your body go through that process because you have to go through a stress response. In other words, the blood is going to start to pool around the core so that you warm your body. And that takes a little bit of time. And so by breathing slow and letting that happen, by the time you get there, you're like, oh, I feel pretty good. And you'll get out of the shower warm for the first time in your life if you've never taken a cold shower. It's like every time you get out of the hot shower, we typically feel cold as soon as we get out. Getting
mm,
out of a cold shower, we feel warm. And part of the reason is because that body's working.
yes.
And so that's a great place to start. Now, if you wanted to take the next step, or you're somebody that's already done the cold showers and you're ready, uh, there's two ways to go about it. One, go to a workshop, go to some sort of guidance because it's fun. It kind of breaks down that anxiety barrier, that worry that I'm doing something really intense. When you get into a group, it becomes like a connection thing, and everybody has a good time. So there's probably a workshop in your area
Mm,
of somebody guiding cold. My only thing about that is because there's lots of different trainers, and some are well skilled and some are less skilled. I would just say don't go in longer than 2 minutes, maybe three at max, because that's really the skin cooling part. If somebody's asking you to get in more than that, I would say I would just pull back a little bit and use some caution. All right. That's not saying you can't under any circumstances. You certainly can. People do longer durations all the time. But if you're brand new, for this is your first time, I would say keep it under 3 minutes and it's up to 3 minutes. So really, once you get in, you're calm amidst the stress. That's the practice. You're getting tons of benefits. Inflammation's lowered, dopamine is spiked high, adrenaline is spiked high. You're going to feel great. So the rest of the time is really about largely the mental and emotional side of things
mm,
if you want to stay focused and calm for an extra duration. I mean, you can definitely build habituation and more physical resilience, but at the beginning, you don't need a lot of that. The body's going to get a lot of benefit from very few seconds in an ice bath. So that would be the next step. Or
mm.
go buy ice at your local shop, fill your bath up, put it in there, stand before your bathtub and just commit. Say, I'm going to get in slowly and calmly. I'm going to
Oh,
breathe slow, right? And maybe have a friend or a family member there too, so that you guys are laughing together and trying it together. Make it a fun thing. Break it
Oh,
down.
oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. There's a couple of things that I love that you said that about the 20 seconds, because you've basically said that there is a threshold. For me, I would call that a threshold. And I know when I'm doing cardio work, for example, I know I have to get past the threshold. And once I'm over that, I'm okay. I can keep going. But there comes a point where you go, I can't do this any longer. And if you can get past that, then you're fine. So that was really cool for you to mention that. But what is the minimum effective dose? Like you said, 3 minutes is the maximum. For this to work, what would be the minimum amount of time you need to experience that freezing cold?
A lot less than you think. And what I would say is the minimal effective dose is undefined. So that's one clear thing. Now we've got some people that have tried to come up with protocols and guidance, and I'll speak to that real quick. And I'll give your listeners some really clear ideas, but
Yes.
it's not perfectly defined. And there was a guy that early on in the Wim Hof method, he was a doctor and wanted to determine what is that minimal effective dose. And so they did a short study where they did showers. Some people did 30-second showers, others did 60 seconds, and the last group did 90 seconds. And at the end, they measured things like, mood, how many sick days that they had, basically a variety of metrics. And they found that there was almost no difference between 30 seconds and 90 seconds. Okay, they all benefited.
I
They all
like that.
felt great, right? So it's like a lot less than you think. And the showers for all of us, I'm a seasoned practitioner. In fact, I take people to the deepest cold in Alaska. My retreats will get into those ice cold waters together, and it's extraordinary and adventurous. I do that. But guess what? My day-to-day training, it's in the half of it is in the shower because it's easy. It's accessible. I mean, I still do freezer tub stuff and deeper cold, but it's like a lot less than we think. So I just want to say that.
Okay.
Another piece is that if you're in water near, let's just say 1 to 5 degrees Celsius, so quite cold, right? Very cold. Inside of 20 seconds, you're getting this giant cascade of dopamine, adrenaline, reduced inflammation. All of those shifts are happening very, very fast. That's not happening on the order of minutes or hours. It happens almost immediately. Now, if we get the temperature up to say, I don't know, 10 degrees or 12 degrees, where it's, still very cold, but much warmer than, 1, well, it's going to take a little bit longer. But I'll tell you, even in those temperatures, tons of people go swimming in those temperatures on a regular basis for, maybe a minute, 3 minutes, and feel amazing. Again, reduced inflammation by their doctor. They're looking at inflammation markers. They're getting the benefits of better weight composition. They're feeling elevated mood and happiness. They've got more energy production throughout the day. Great. Right? So it's just not that much.
So it's win, win, win. Is there a temperature that's too cold, and can it be dangerous for some people?
Yeah. If you build up, there's almost no temperature that would be too cold, but you have to build it up. Okay. So if you're starting, the biggest mistakes that people make are two things. One, if you're unhabituated, right? You've not done any cold training, but you're just going to jump in there and try to muscle it out. Like we've seen people do that, and sometimes they have cardiac arrest. Like it could be dangerous, right?
Yeah.
So we don't want to we don't want to have people think, oh, we're just going to do it anyway. Like there's actually a little bit of the method to the madness. Okay.
Yeah.
But starting in those cold temperatures for, let's just say 2 weeks, you can do it faster under good guidance, but let's just say 2 weeks, you're just very gradual at how you're getting in. It's wonderful, right? So, keep those temperatures a little bit warmer, just uncomfortably cold, as uncomfortable as you can make it. and breathe slowly and slowly get the temperature down. I would say that that's probably the best way for the first couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And once you've got that base, your body can handle a lot more and you can start to steer down the temperature.
Amazing. I have to try this. Where I'm actually having some deep tissue massages at the moment, and where I'm going for those has the cold plunges. So
Nice.
I may even have a go. And if I do, I'll film it and I'll put it up on social. And
Love
if
it.
I can do it, people, anyone can do it. Honestly, I am the biggest wimp when it comes to the cold. I feel the cold. Now, let's get to breathing. As I said earlier, I have tried numerous breathing techniques. I've been to classes, some breathwork classes, and I find them all beautiful. Like, let's face it, I leave there feeling just in like my body, mentally, emotionally, I feel so much better after having done one of those breath classes. But when I'm in an anxious state, I've tried box breathing. And if people don't know, like essentially I do it on counts of 4 breaths in, 4 breath holds, 4 counts of exhaling, and 4 counts of just holding on empty. And then I've tried the 4-7-8 rule, which I heard about by a psychologist who swore that this thing works. So it was inhaling for 4 seconds, holding for 7, and exhaling for 8 on a audible sigh. And then 2 weeks ago on another podcast, which is claiming to be the world's #1 podcast at the moment, I won't say which one, but it is a podcast I love. There was a doctor on there, also psychologist, who was talking about a 5.5 rule of breathing. Now, when I've been anxious, none of these have worked. So are we just all different, or are these things just a load of rubbish?
Oh, I love this question.
Oh, good.
All right. So let's get into just two basic things for your audience to understand that I think will be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So one is that anytime we have coherence breathing, so even inhales and exhales, that's your 5.5, right? 5.5 seconds in, 5.5 seconds out. And it's really, somewhere between 4 and 6 seconds per breath. That's hypoventilation. In other words, the standard breathing is normally like 12 to 16 breaths a minute, would be what most of us are doing at in a resting state. So we're really slowing it down and starting to control our breath. And it can be very down regulating and feel calming under many circumstances. Well, so can like the 4-7-8. So the 4-7-8 is every inhale is a little bit more action oriented and every exhale is a little bit more rest oriented. And so when we breathe in for that 4 seconds, right, we get the stimulation, we hold, that's going to help us with the breath control. And then we breathe long exhales for, that 8 seconds, and that's going to calm the nervous system, or so it goes. Box breathing is just another breath control, kind of mixing those two concepts. So why doesn't it work for everybody? Well, the reason it doesn't work for everybody is sometimes we've got a lot of anxiety and we've got some hormones in the system that are elevated. And what I would ask your audience is, think about a time when you were feeling really upbeat or really anxious or really, action sort of state, and you put on really soft, slow music that maybe in some circumstances you would like, but in that moment, it almost feels like it grates on you. Eventually, our nervous systems will calm down to align with that music, and maybe we like it, but it takes a really long time. That's kind of like using those breathing methods when we're feeling that state sometimes. It doesn't always take us to that calm space. But if we turn on that music to match our state, and we're feeling a little bit more energetic, and then the next song, we slow it down a little bit, and the next song, we slow it down, in 3 songs, we can be calm. because we guided our nervous system properly. This is what we can do with also the breath. You can do that with music, of course, but you can do it with the breath too. And so when you're feeling that anxiousness, a lot of people find it better to harness that state first. So in other words, breathe at that faster tempo, maybe elevate your system slightly before we take it back down. And you're going to achieve that end a lot more sufficiently and quickly and completely, because the body got to use and produce some of those hormones that flesh everything out, rather than just trying to take the nervous system down, if that makes sense.
Yes. What was really interesting in some of these breath classes that I did, because I know the exhalation of the breath is when we start to calm everything down. It's not the inhalation, it's the exhalation. When in these classes, there was a lot of breath holding. And at first you kind of get to a point that if I'm going to hold my breath another second, I'm going to explode or I'm going to suffocate myself. And then you get beyond that. And the breath holding goes for quite some time. Mm-hmm. What is the benefit of that? And because at first it can be scary.
Sure. Well, so breath holds are like amplifiers. That's the best way to kind of think about it. Amplifies whatever experience that you're having. So let's just take the case of Wim Hof Method basic protocol breathing. To define it for your audience, just to kind of help everybody out in case you're unfamiliar, it's 30 to 40 large breaths, right? So really focused on the inhale, 30 to 40 of those. And then you're going to do an exhale to lung neutral. They're just nice and soft and easy. You still have a little bit of air in the lungs, but you've just kind of relaxed, and you're going to hold your breath on that exhale for as long as you can. Well, what that does is it amplifies the rest state of things, because I did it on the exhale, and then it'll amplify that experience. And so what happens is during those big breaths in, we're elevating the nervous system. We're action-oriented. We're building up and producing a lot of adrenaline. And then we go into that resting breath hold. And for the first 80% of it, it is very resting. It's like pulling us deep into a rest state. Mm-hmm. But at that bottom, when you're starting to feel like you're almost going to pop or you're anxious again, you're starting to get to this phase of, really low oxygen in the blood or tissues or both.
Yes.
And so we start to get anxiety and adrenaline kicks back in again. And we get this big boost of stress hormones again. Now, there's benefit to that because we're training the body to stress and then rest, stress and rest, and stress and rest. And if you do it right, by the end, you'll feel extremely relaxed and peaceful. And you'll retrain the body to automatically respond to stress, that when we see it, we'll respond with a rest response almost immediately following, rather than what most people experience, which is when they get into a stress state, they end up staying elevated in that stress for extended periods through recoil stress response, right? Most people suffer from that. They struggle to get out of stress. So this helps retrain the system when done well. So that would be the positive benefit. Now, in some other contexts, when you're holding our breath, it can amplify, whatever it is that we're doing, depending on the protocol. And it can be really, energetic or anxiety provoking for some people. And it's so you gotta kind of know where to place your breath holds to get the best out of it. And they should be intentional, right?
So it sounds like this is almost cathartic, depending on where you're at in your life.
Well-led breath work can be transformational. There is no question about it. One of my recent instructors, I'm running an instructor program right now, and he just got hired to lead a breath work for a company. And he had 3 people come up to him and say, I am never going to be the same again. Right? That's a really powerful testimony in a positive way. Like, I had no idea the body and brain could do this. Wow. Just from breathing? It's powerful stuff.
Absolutely. So with all these different modalities, all these different people that are coming out with their ideas on what breath work should look like, and all claiming that they have found the holy grail of breathing, and it's becoming more and more popular. how do you maintain the integrity of what you teach in this rapidly expanding space?
Yeah, that brings up such an important point. For me, I try to educate as much as possible. I try to share the tools to empower people so that they understand what they're getting into or what they're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the biggest ways. And I'm doing an instructor training program, doing that same thing. So for example, part of this program involves breath mastery. So we understand no matter what discipline you're coming from, what tradition, what style, you understand the parts that are put together so that you can know, oh, this has this intended outcome. That's extremely powerful and maybe not be appropriate for this other setting.
Mm.
It's really powerful. It's strong and it deserves respect. And I don't think because of the onslaught of everybody jumping in, I don't think everybody quite understands the power in all cases, and it can lead to a lot of mishaps.
And also a lot of people thinking that it's a load of rubbish because it didn't work for them.
That too. Yep.
That is
Yep.
the biggest issue. Once everyone starts
Yeah.
chiming in with what they believe is the mystery, the key to unlocking greatness in the world. It's like things 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 don't go as planned, and some people have no benefit and think, well, I'm never going to do breath work again. This is a load of rubbish. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say that, it's not by accident that it's probably one of our oldest traditions, right? Breath work in multiple traditions and cultures has been around for as long as anything else that we have a culture and tradition of, right?
Mm,
So, and it comes from multiple places. That's not by accident,
mm,
right? That we've got styles and so forth that trace back thousands of years. So I would say that like there is something to it for sure. And those that have experienced well-led breath work or breathing protocols at the right moment know how transformative it can be and just tap you into just that basic deep trust of yourself, understanding how
mm,
to manage stress, understanding
mm,
performance,
mm.
all of those pieces, they're there.
Yes, I love that you said tapping into yourself. Now, when I teach my students and we do breath work, very interesting. One of the first things I say to them is trust your body,
Mm.
because your body actually knows what to do. And when you get in the way of it, that's when things start to go wrong, when you start to manipulate or overdo or extend yourself or try and push and shove things around in a way that your body is not responding to, because you're going against the body's natural flow. That's when you're going to run into strife. So I always say, listen to your body and trust your body that it knows what to do. And I always say, because one of the things that singers get really messed up with is breathing.
Mhm.
And I say, trust. You came into this world, you knew how to breathe. You know how to breathe. You instinctively know the right way of breathing, because if you didn't, you'd be dead. And they all laugh at me and go, well, it's true. You know how to breathe, otherwise you'd be dead. So, but it's just going back to listening to your body, and what may work for one person may not work for another. So if you're trying a breathing technique that's not working for you, perhaps there is another technique that will work for you better. And even in that moment, during that one particular day, because what may work for you tomorrow may be different again based on how you're feeling. Am I right in this?
Yeah, I think you've nailed it. I mean, we've got so much internal wisdom that our body just naturally knows what to do. There's so much in there, and it's almost discovering those pieces about yourself and how to
Mm.
get out of your own way. You know,
Yes.
breathing is automatic. There's no question about it. And it's going to happen whether we're thinking about it or not. And when we try to apply sort of conscious breathing, we need to be I would say be careful in how much we're applying it. It's like a training regimen. We're going to do it under some limited stuff and then let the motor run. Just get out of your own way and let the body do what the body does.
Mm.
And if we've got a good training regimen, you're going to get that good feedback. It's going to be like, oh, yeah, I'm feeling better. I can hold my breath better. I can manage my airflow better. It's coming from a deeper place. I can project more. I can pull back more, whatever it might be. You'll develop those skills as you engage in this, but mostly it's learn a little bit, then get out of your own way.
Yeah. Yep. Get out of your own way. Absolutely. Matt, we're going to start winding up. You've been very generous with your time and sharing all your knowledge and wisdom around this work. But if there's someone listening who feels that they would like to start dabbling into, we talked about the cold therapy, but even with some of the breathing techniques, where would you send them, or what would you suggest that they do to start with?
So you can do one of two things, depending on your area. There are a number of good applications out right now. There's some that have very, very simple protocols that kind of look like they've got a lot, but they're pretty simple. There's one called breathwork. There's the Oxygen Advantage and the Wim Hof Method. All of these groups have apps. Cold Club will be rolling out our app. I'll just kind of plug that one. It's coming out in the next couple of months. So we've been working really hard on that. So those are all good resources, and they're pretty inexpensive or even free in many cases. If you can, go see a trainer. Go to a group breathwork class, and you can look for people with reviews, right? So you could just Google in your area or use whatever search engine you like, but look for a thing in your area and look at how people are responding to it. Typically, when you get a lot of reviews, it's not a perfect thing, but if you see that and you go, okay, that person has some good feedback. If you see others that have like a 2-star or 3-star, maybe stay away. But if you do that, it's a wildly different experience. And there's workshops that are happening all throughout the world for any number of disciplines. Find the one that works for you. For some people, it's the Wim Hof Method. For others, it's conscious connected breathing. Other people really resonate with more of the Oxygen Advantage, CO2 side of things, and the nasal breathing. So I would say there's lots out there that's good. Go find the thing that works for you.
Now, in winding up, I've been asking all my guests similar questions to finish up on, because there are a lot of people listening to this show who have probably lost their way in life, or maybe they're feeling stuck, they're in survival mode, and they're frightened of taking that next step in their lives and moving forward for whatever reason. And one of the reasons people fear taking their next step is because they're worried what people are going to think about them if they fail, or just worried about what people are going to say about them irrespectively. Now, along your journey and in the work that you've done, I'm sure you've encountered people when you've told them, this is what I do for a living, they think, oh, this guy's mad, or this is all woo-woo. Have you ever worried about what people have thought about you and the work that you do?
Yeah, I mean, of course, because the perception can be quite stark. Even my daughter, who loves and adores me to death, at one point we were talking about, how she tells people what I do. And I said, why don't you just tell them I'm a breath worker? She said, is that another thing for unemployed? Another word for unemployed, right? She's giving me a hard time. She's hilarious. She's amazing, right? But I laughed my tail off and I said, I get it. The perception there is like, you do what? You teach people how to do something they do all the time? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But to be fair, like, those who know, I will say that. And if we can get past that, and I know that my mission of helping people has been so valuable, like the feedback has been so valuable over the years, that I just keep being encouraged to take that risk and to step out and to follow my purpose. And I believe that I'm in that vein and doing the right thing. And so when I get the naysayers or the people that are skeptical, I always say it's okay, uh, if you want to try it, you might change your mind. And I've had everybody from doctors change their mind dramatically to the ultimate skeptics of all kinds, shift their perception when they have that experience. And that reinforces my ability to step into it and know that I'm doing the right thing.
A lot of people who listen to this show are performing artists and creatives. And for a lot of them, they fear speaking up, or they use their voice as singers because they don't feel heard. And that's a way for them to connect to their most authentic voice in life. Have you ever felt that you haven't been heard or you didn't have a voice in your own life?
Yeah, that's really powerful. I often will say that the voice is your first line of like self-defense. So that immediately kind of takes me back to that place, because I think as a kid, I often felt I didn't have a voice. And even as a young man, I didn't have a voice. And so when those things crop up, it's like I really focused on empowering my voice to say what I believe and to stand firmly behind it, and also be measured and careful with the words, because our words matter. But I would say that that's been a lot of my mission, is to focus on that voice and hopefully empower others to share their voice as well.
So what would you like to say to someone who is listening and is feeling unheard or stuck in their lives? Do you have a piece of advice for them? Something perhaps that's worked for you, or something that works for the people that you work with?
Taking action is probably one of the biggest pieces, because we're not going to think our way out of it. Sometimes we can just get looped in our heads. I found that to be the case when I wasn't taking whatever action, and I see that in others. But as soon as you step into that thing that puts you slightly outside of your comfort zone, right? Not way out, just a little bit out. You start to realize, oh, I can do this thing. Oh, I build that trust in myself. I do have a voice and I do matter. Like, you start to get to that and you start to build courage, and you keep doing that, and extraordinary things will happen, and you'll find that deep voice. You'll find that powerful voice that all of us have inside of us.
So setting small, achievable goals.
Sure.
One small step for mankind. What did they say? You know what I'm saying here. It's been a long interview. No. But thank you, Matt. We're going to share the links to the Cold Club, to your book, in the show notes. I want to thank you very much for being a part of the show today. You have shared so much wisdom, so much of your knowledge. You've been very generous with your time. I truly appreciate you, and I wish you all the very best in the future. And when I do take the cold plunge, I said when and not if, I will send you the video.
I can't wait to see it. Amazing.
I don't know, you may not want to see it.
And thank you so much for your time and having me on the show. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with your audience and connect with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
All the best.
Bye, Matt.